like creative people are resilient. They will find ways to keep injecting life back into it. But if it's such a struggle all the time, people will rightly lose their patience and go take their wonderful skills and creativity elsewhere.
Hello and welcome to The Family of Things, a podcast about life and how we choose to live it. I'm Helen Shaw, and my guest today, well, as a small girl, she roller skated in an Indian palace. She grew up in Sweden and Turkey, studied in England before moving to Dublin nearly a decade ago. It's the writer and performer Chandrika Narayanan-Mohan, and Chandrika was born in India, in New Delhi. Her grandfather was a former Indian president, hence the palace. And here in Ireland, she's become both an arts manager and an artist. And her poetry has been published widely in places like the recent anthology by the Ireland Chair of Poetry, Hold Open the Door, and the collection Writing Home, the New Irish Poets. Chandrika, welcome. Lovely to talk to you.
Thanks so much for having me on.
And Chandrika, I know you mostly grew up outside of India. You know, I mentioned your grandfather and your grandmother because you do have an incredible grandmother as well from Burma, I think. But can you share with us a little bit of what it was like growing up in that household that became so famous?
So my grandfather was a diplomat. And he studied at LSE, joined the diplomatic service, went up through government, minister, and then vice president, and then finally president. So I lived with my grandparents and my mother. I was born in Delhi, and then I moved to the US with my mum as a diplomat for a few years. Then I moved back to Delhi, I think when I was maybe 7-ish or something like that, and spent a few years there and left when I was just turned 13 to travel with my mother again. So, I didn't live there for loads of years. You know, it was a strange upbringing, I suppose, but it's all I really knew. And now I live in studio flats in Dublin. So it's you know, it was just another world altogether.
He seems like an incredible character, though, your grandfather, from what I've read of him, in that he came from the Dalit community, from a village. And I've seen you show photographs in a piece, I think, that Circa Pollock did some years ago. And it does look that environment was an incredible influence, even if you weren't around it for very, very long in your life, that it must have left its mark on you.
I mean, yeah, like any childhood memories do. I mean, I was very lucky. I got to travel around a lot, which is amazing because I certainly haven't traveled recently. And, you know, ever since living on my own, I cannot afford to travel the way I used to back then. So I was really lucky that my mother allowed me to join on some state visits. So I got to see other parts of the world when I was very young, which is an experience most people wouldn't be able to have. So that was really exciting to see other cultures and get these amazing tours and go to Brazil and Peru and Mongolia, really amazing things to experience as a child. But a lot of it was just formal functions and the weirdness of protocol and all those things, which are definitely not particularly interesting to an 11-year-old. For me, it was just like, yes, it was amazing in a lot of ways, but it was also quite strange. And there was no privacy. And, you know, I'm an only child. So it was a lot of me like you were saying, rollerblading around on my own or hanging out with my cats. So not a particularly thrilling life. Very, very, very happy when I moved with my mother to Sweden when she was an ambassador to Sweden. And yeah, it was really nice to have loads of freedom and walk to school and just enjoy a city on foot like that. I mean, I know that to most people, the whole palace thing sounds wonderful, but I really loved leaving it, to be honest. Coming from a space of privilege to say that, obviously. But yeah, it was an interesting time. I'm sure it was formative in many ways, but I suppose the things that happened to me as a teenager are what stuck with me the most. But I guess that's the same with a lot of people.
I mean, your mom also sounds fascinating because in many ways, to be an ambassador, to be a diplomat at that time, she must have been, and she is, and she's still in Switzerland, she must be quite an incredible woman.
My mom's pretty amazing. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Like, I mean, obviously the older I get, the more I learn about her. And that's, I suppose, what happens when you become an adult child. Like, she has this amazing literary past. She won like a writing competition when she was very, very young. And she has this picture of her and Nehru giving her the prize. And yeah, she was a brilliant poet when she was like a child. And then she was one of the co-founders of the Book Review, an Indian like literary magazine. And then when she was in the civil service for about 30 years, and I was really lucky that I got to travel with her to North America, to Sweden, and then to Turkey. So those are where I got to go with her. Yeah, and she's an absolutely remarkable person. She's a cancer survivor. She's tough and brilliant, and I love her to bits. And I haven't seen her in a year and a half, which is really, really, really hard. Yeah.
That's a long time. I mean, we're all just grateful that we have the internet, which is how we're connecting, but equally how we're staying in touch with people that close to us all around the world. And were you close to your grandparents? I mean, are they your paternal or maternal grandparents?
Maternal, so they're my mum's parents. Yeah, I grew up with them when we were in India. All that time I lived with them. So yeah, I was very, very close to them.
What were they like? Because whatever I've read about your grandfather, less available to me about your grandmother, seems an extraordinary progressive man. I don't know whether when you meet people know an awful lot about your granddad or that ancestry. What's your memory of him as a granddad?
My memory of him as a granddad is sitting on a beanbag watching TV with me, to be honest. But like... Oh, I mean, he loved literature, so it was always really fun to talk about literature and poetry with him. And my grandmother, I mean, I come from a really literary, fairly progressive family. My granddad was a massive feminist. Like a lot of the times when I've been sort of talking about being a queer poet and queer writer, and I keep saying, well, my granddad was a feminist and my childhood hairdresser was a drag queen. So I don't have the insecurities that a lot of people would normally associate with an Indian family. A lot of our lives revolved around art and literature and stories. My grandmother, she used to work for All India Radio, which is really cool because it kind of feels like now I'm doing interviews and stuff. She'd love to know that I was doing things that involve public speaking, I suppose. And yeah, and she translated a collection of Burmese short stories called Sweet and Sour. So yeah, I'm really happy that I come from a very literary family. And on my father's side as well, like one of my relatives is one of the biggest art historians in India, and there's a lot of writers and artists on that side. So I'm very privileged to grow up in a family that loves and embraces the arts, because I've never had insecurities about pursuing a career in the arts. And also the fact that my mum bought me art sets, but also microscopes. So I was never pigeonholed into what interests were appropriate or not. I was just kind of allowed to enjoy everything. And I really think that's why I have a multidisciplinary approach to creativity. And I really think it's because my family helped foster that by answering questions about space, but also literature and philosophy. It was a good bunch to grow up with.
So very open, in a sense, open-minded as well as open in their perspective on the world. And when you end up in Sweden and later in Turkey, you were exposed right through that adolescence and growing up period to a variety of cultures and that sort of richness of the ways in which people live. Turkey seems to have been really important to you, informing you as well. I mean, you loved Turkey, right? Yeah,
I mean, when you're a child of a diplomat, or, you know, people who have parents who work for multinationals, or, you know, military brats or diplo brats like me, you know, like we tend to be in international schools. So the norm for us is mixed cultures, because we always end up in British schools or international schools, you know. So I'm really lucky that was the environment I got to be in. in different countries. In Turkey, it was interesting because even though it was an international school, there were actually very few of us who weren't Turkish. And it was amazing. Like, I didn't know Turkish at all. And in my first week, like, my friends there just like wrapped me up in their friend group, and everyone was so welcoming and so friendly. And that was my introduction to like Turkish culture and just how people are, that they're amazing and welcoming. And my best friend lives in Istanbul. A lot of my friends are Turkish and from Turkey, and it's been really upsetting to see everything that's happened and how it has spiraled. My best friend just told me today that they have banned the sale of pens and paper for no reason. It's all a bit ridiculous, and it's all horrible, and all the anti-LGBTQ sentiment. But when I lived there, it was really fun. It was before it got really bad.
What year did you leave, Chandrika?
Well, I left in 2006 to go to university in the UK, but I properly left a few years later when my mother left to move to Switzerland. And it was really fun. Like, Turkey's great. Ankara especially is it's like a rocker city. Every supermarket's playing Led Zeppelin. Like, my school was like that. It was a really great place to be, and I really, really liked it. And my regret is that I didn't get to learn Turkish. So I didn't understand half of the gossip happening around me at any given point of time until people remember to switch to English for me.
Because English, we should say, is your first language.
Yeah, English is my first language. Like, my grandparents came from 2 different countries and spoke English together. So I was brought up in English. Like, I learned Hindi as a second language, but I haven't been able to retain it because I don't have anyone to talk to with, and I've really forgotten a lot of it. But yeah, Turkey is a really special and brilliant place, and it's been really heartbreaking to see my friends suffer in a lot of ways over the last few years. It used to be bohemian and fun and wonderful. So hopefully that'll end one day and people can just live their lives again. Who knows? Yeah. It'd be pretty great if that was the case.
It would, though it feels like it's a while away from following events. I mean, Chandrika, you were saying yourself there about how Turkey now is for LGBTQ, and you've described yourself now in Ireland as a queer person of colour poet. So in some ways, you've said that was an easy coming out with your family and with your own background. But when in your own head did you come out to yourself?
I honestly don't remember. It probably in university I kind of copped on. I went, okay. It was highly anticlimactic, just because I didn't really have anything to fight against, so I didn't realize it was something to be worried about. I think I might have just assumed it was normal, because there were a good few bi people in my class in high school. Like, my godparents are a gay Australian couple, so all of it was so normalized for me that
it was no big deal.
I didn't have the anxiety that made it any milestone, and I came out to my parents. Oh, I keep wanting to say last year, but what I mean is 2 years ago at Pride.
We all have a missing year.
Yeah, and it wasn't for any reason except that I had decided to consciously take on the mantle of like being professionally queer. Like, I'll be on queer artist panels. And I realized, well, if that's the space I'm going to be in, I should probably tell them. And then I did. And again, it was delightfully anticlimactic. My godfathers were very pleased. They were like, one of us. But I was very, slightly nervous, but like grateful that it was a whole lot of nothing in the end. And I really wish that more people's stories were similar to mine, but I'm also happy to share it because everyone is used to such traumatic coming out stories, and I am happy to share that.
Do you find it funny in Ireland that we're much more driven by our traumas and silences and censoring our sexuality, and also that for most people in Ireland, their coming out story is usually traumatic?
Well, that's not Ireland. That's internationally, to be honest. I know that my stories, can be a bit of an anomaly, especially when people assume that I have a Indian family. It must be traditional. They must be, prejudiced. Nah, they're pretty cool. I like my family. I'm very lucky to have them. Both sides, all of it. Surprisingly, pretty progressive and very chill. So I realize, of course, I'm hugely privileged to have that experience, but I'm also happy to share a positive coming out story, because you honestly don't hear enough of them.
Hopefully it'll be more the norm in the future.
Well, we're getting there slowly. I mean, even here, we have marriage equality, but still not loads of equality in terms of trans rights or even queer parent rights. There's always a long way to go, even here. But yeah, in Turkey, it's hard because, I know Pride has been tear gassed for a few years in a row now, all under the excuse of, we can't have any protest, therefore, and the government basically have made really bizarre statements saying basically queer people don't exist. And it's so hard to see my friends, their personhood attacked in such immature and gross ways. And I just wish that they could just be themselves and be okay. So yeah, I'm lucky to be here, and I know that I'm lucky. So all I can really do is at least talk about what's happening to the people I love so that people know about it.
Brilliant. I mean, Chandrika, when we talked about the podcast, you were quite rightly challenging that idea of a podcast about life and how we choose to live it. Because as you were saying to me, as a migrant, it often brings up that idea of what is choice and how do we choose things? Because I guess for you, that whole transition from living in England to here wasn't necessarily by choice, that was more or less forced on you in 2012 when you left England.
Yeah. I mean, it's strange. Even in the place of privilege and wonderfulness of traveling with my mother, it's not like I chose where to go and when. I went wherever I was supposed to go, whether I was ready or not. And it was exciting to have the opportunity to move to different countries. But again, it's not like I chose any of that. And then I did choose to move, my university to England. And that was exciting to actually make that kind of decision. And I was there for about 7 years, but I didn't turn up here under the best of circumstances at all. I was supposed to do a second MA in London in arts management, and that's how I was planning to stay there longer. And then I got a letter in the post. Oh, sorry. Because
you were doing, we should sort of say, I mean, you were doing what sounds like really interesting work as an art historian. So it seemed you were creating a pool of work which was in a particular genre and a particular way of working, that you were on a path at that point and really going places.
Well, I mean, like everyone who graduated in a recession, it was all internships and mostly unpaid, I did an art history and literature degree in the University of York, which was amazing. And then I decided to go to UCL to study art history. And then, we graduated into a recession, no jobs, nothing. So it was, again, very lucky that I had the support of my family. And that is something about, the arts and humanities that sometimes it is an exclusive space to be in, because not everyone can do unpaid internships. So I did an internship at the V&A, Victoria and Albert Museum, just a week at the Wellcome. I really wanted to work at the Wellcome. I love arts and science. And then I got my first sort of paid internship at Christies, which was fascinating.
Must have been.
Yeah, and I suppose, it was actually during the Lehman Brothers sale is when I worked at Christies, and that was so interesting. So, I mean, basically, I graduated from an art history degree, but I realized I could work in museums, I can work in auctioning, I can work in fine arts. So I just decided to get as much work experience wherever I could. And even though working in Christie's and fine arts sales was really thrilling and interesting, I did realize I really liked the public engagement side of things. So I was really interested in working in museums, or anything that had a more public engagement side seemed to be what really excited me. And then, so I was going to do another arts management degree. And then I got a letter in the post saying, we would love to accept you, but we are forced to reject you because immigration rules changed last month. I said, what? That it was...
Theresa May.
Yeah. Oh, good old Theresa May. I owe her. Dodge that bullet, to be perfectly honest. I'm okay being here. But yeah, so I had a few weeks to leave my life of 7 years behind and find somewhere else to go. Trying to find arts management degrees everywhere else. Really, really, really lucky that I found the UCD arts management course, saw that it was like one of the oldest in Europe, which I didn't realize at all. Didn't even know what UCD was. and managed to get in because the UCD Arts Management Cultural Policy course is really interesting in that they have almost like a remit they've given themselves that about a third of the class should be non-Irish, so that everyone can learn from each other's cultural policies and each other's sort of art histories through it. And yeah, I turned up here a few weeks later and definitely did not deal with any of the trauma and grief of dumping my life that I was working incredibly hard to build. All my best friends, the chosen family of a university group, gone. And I turned up here on my own. I had one friend from university who worked at Google, so at least I had somewhere to stay while I was looking for somewhere to move to. But it was all pretty insane. And yeah, it's something I definitely did not even deal with mentally, I don't think, for a few years until I suddenly kind of went, that was horrible. You just lost your whole life in a matter of weeks. But,
and had to start again.
Yeah, start from scratch when I'd actually worked really hard to like get to the point where I was like, cool, I'm going to have this arts career in London. I've done all the networking. I've built all these contacts. I'm ready to start a really great arts job and career here. But at the same time, I'm pretty happy I left because I was also living in the suburbs with a partner and actually not particularly enjoying that life. And I really liked Dublin, and Dublin, working the arts and knowing the creative communities in Dublin has given me, honestly, I think more than London ever could. It's just the right place for me. I started writing here. I started performing in like my first month here. I went to Milk and Cookies storytelling. Never been in front of a mic in my life, ever. I didn't even think of performing, and I just did it. And turns out I was really good at it. And it was just because before I moved here, I researched loads of events so I could like just go local as soon as I arrived. So I read Le Cool religiously, found all the different events going on. So I did what I could, like I just wanted to assimilate quick and not be a tourist and be part of what was already happening here. And like, there are people that I know now that I met in my first month here. Like I also became a Le Cool journalist in a week.
But you took it so seriously because you researched it. You kind of decided that you were going to integrate, and that you were very serious about that. It was like, I'm going to go to these places where these people are. I'm going to figure out what's happening. But I'm always taken by that story that you just went and stood up, and you had never done it before in terms of an open mic night.
Yeah,
you're clearly quite extrovert and being able to do that, but that's quite a turn to just suddenly say, I'm going to stand up and do open mic and also be funny and start performing.
I remember looking it up and I'm like, that sounds lovely. Because I remember looking at some stuff in London and being tempted before I left. And I think I'd attended one open mic and didn't do anything, but I was just kind of curious about what they were. And then moving here and I saw Milk and Cookies, and I loved the idea that it was a no pressure thing. You just told a story. You didn't have to be funny. You didn't have to be anything. You just got to tell a story. And I'm like, that's so cool. I love it. And it was, in the exchange, the beautiful, wonderful, cozy, like, hug. That was the exchange. And I love that it was just no pressure. And I remember the topic was an item of clothing. So I brought my Glastonbury t-shirt. And I told the story about the first time I've ever done any interesting on my own, which was the choice story, that I never ever had my own stories. I always told other people's stories. Oh, my friend went on a gap year. My friend did this. My friend did that. And I never had my own, adult stories to tell. And I went to Glastonbury alone, and that was my first ever festival I've ever been to in my life. I just chose, the biggest one. It was, and I remember my mom had so much self-control. She was like watching me get tickets, and she just bit her tongue the whole time. She just let me do it. But I thought my friends were coming with me.
And how old were you then?
18. And I realized that none of my friends got tickets, and I was the only one. And I went, oh, right, I suppose I'm going to the largest festival in Europe alone. Okay. Never done anything even close to it before. And I got on the bus, and a girl was sitting on her own. And we were both on our own, and we made friends, and we're still friends today.
Cool.
So that was the story I basically told, like the first interesting thing that I had ever done.
The first big adventure on your own.
Yeah, and I won a prize, and I went, oh, all right then. Turns out I can do storytelling. What a weird new skill set. And Yeah, I did a lot of that. I was the first performer on the very first Moth in Dublin, which was crazy to be the very first one. But I loved storytelling.
Do you think being a newcomer, a stranger in a new, strange city, makes it easier to do that because everybody is new and you know that you can almost go out there and talk to strangers? Because sometimes you think, is that part of the benefit of what can seem like the negative of having been dumped in a brand new city?
To be honest, I think it's the opposite, because most of us migrants have a really hard time making friends because people might be friendly, but people don't tend to invite you in. Like, they're nice to you, but they're not going to, adopt you into a group. That's kind of how I felt much later when I encountered the burlesque and cabaret community, the game developer community. They're the ones who are like, you're one of us now. But that was only a few years ago. No, I know that the reason I was able to be part of things was because I am used to assimilating, because I am strategic about assimilating, because I've done it as a teenager my whole life. The
diplomat's child, the third culture.
You turn up, what do you do? Who do you meet? How do you become part of the furniture as quick as possible?
You figure out what's going on and who you can join.
Exactly. But I know that that's very much not the experience of most people when they turn up here. It's a very isolating experience because, they don't have the creative community that I kind of immediately knew to seek out. Most people really find it extremely hard. And even with all the creative communities and with all the people I knew, it still took me about 8 years to get best friends. The friends I made immediately all left because they were non-EU people. And migrants, I think, are attracted to migrants as friends because we understand each other's way of living and each other's insecurities, and there's a real camaraderie.
There's empathy. There's open empathy.
But it means that they leave. So I often say I'm the last migrant standing because Irish immigration does not make it very likely that people can stay and work here. So they all just left one by one until I was like the last one left, and I had no choice but to try and make friends with
Irish,
which was hard until I found my way into these specific creative communities that just bundled me up and said, you're with us now. But that took like 7-8 years to get
in terms of finding your own tribe, whether it's in the art community or in the LGBTQ community, that you're actually assimilated more into groups of commonality. A very good friend who is a diplomat's child and shares that whole growing up, and she then married a foreign correspondent. So Pia has continually moved cities, and Pia always... She joins a choir and a book club in every city, in whatever language, and thankfully she's very good at languages. The moment she goes somewhere new, she sets those roots down by creating these communities around her and by joining things.
But I suppose people in those professions, I guess they know what they've signed up for. Whereas here, I did not sign up for leaving again, but I've had 3 immigration scares while I've been here where I didn't know which country I was going to be in the next month. So I've had horrible depressive periods of not knowing if I'm going to be kicked out or not because of something entirely not my fault, just because of paperwork that, arbitrarily done, that once I appealed them, it was fine in the end. But, I've had a good few scares here that were really, really horrible. I would like to not be taken by surprise ever again. That would be great.
Yeah, because I suppose it's easy to talk about assimilation, but if you don't know how long you can stay, it's very difficult to even get beyond that as a basics in a community. And for you then, do you now feel paperwork and migration, all those issues are sorted? Do you feel that you have security here?
There is no such thing as security until you're a citizen. That's how it is. No matter, because you just never know when they're just going to change a rule, or I don't know. So I'm on a stamp 4 right now, and honestly, that is the reason I am doing creative things, because I was so scared being on a work permit. You're not allowed to take any other employment whatsoever. So I obviously was too scared to say, book me for a gig. I was too scared to do any of those things. So I had to just do fun gigs, but I was too scared to consider an actual second career because it was illegal to even do that. And I didn't know maybe it was legal or it was not. But yeah, before I got a stamp 4, it was like next year I might get kicked out or just something will go wrong. Because I've seen it happen to my best friends where everything is absolutely in order, their entire application's perfect, and they're asked to leave anyway. My last work permit application was rejected and I had to appeal it. So I was unemployed for 4 months, but not allowed to leave the country. So still had to pay rent and not legally allowed to work, but had to legally quit my job in order to apply. And that is usually where migrants are forced out and can't come back. Again, it was horrible to ask my dad for money in my 30s. Jesus, I was so proud of like supporting myself and it was fine. But 4 months with no work and forced to pay Dublin rents, I didn't have a choice. And I never want to be in that position ever again. I now have savings, thanks pandemic.
That's completely untenable. And so the stage you're at now, this stage, stamp 4?
Yeah, so stamp 4 basically just means you can live and work here pretty much freely. You can apply for loans. You're not allowed any loans before that. So if I wanted, I can get a mortgage now.
And is there a time limit on that, Chandrika?
No, a lot of people are on stamp 4s for Yonkers because they don't want to become citizens, you know. But I very much so. I have my citizenship application nearly ready. It's just that they shut down the citizenship process last year and they only opened it for a tiny window. So I'll have to go through this again. But the thing is that as long as I'm not a citizen, I have to apply for a visa to see my own mother. That only ever lasts 9 months. It takes months to apply for. I have to get my residency card in order to apply for a Schengen visa. The residency card thing takes a few months. So every single year I go through this huge process just to have a visa to see my mother that only ever really lasts half a year and expires every summer. I have to do it all over again. So I want to become a citizenship. So
become a citizen.
I would like to visit my mother. Yes.
It's just as well that maybe Theresa May did that, because at least you, when this happens, and it will happen, you're in the European Union.
Yeah. Oh, I had no chance in the UK anyway. Just after I left, they shut down every option really to live and work as just a normal tax-paying human being. They really made it impossible. So at least here, even though the migration system has gotten worse and worse and worse and more closed and harder and harder to actually just live and work here. Again, it's just trying to be a taxpayer. It is
just
at least
trying
more
to live your
possible
life.
here.
That's all.
Yeah, like at least it's more possible here than in lots of other European countries, and certainly in the UK. Like I have a chance at citizenship. I wouldn't have had one there.
Hopefully, things open, things will move.
Yeah, it'll take another 2 years and a grand, but I'll do it and I'll get there eventually.
You've talked about Dublin quite a bit, and I suppose how you used Dublin as a relationship to ground yourself and to find a home here. And you've written beautifully about that in the Writing Home, the New Irish Poets collection. And I know you've a piece that you're going to share with us now, which is really lovely as well. But the opening of that blog in Writing Home that you did, the blog piece is quite beautiful. Do you remember that?
Did I write a blog piece? I don't remember.
You wrote, I had found an aerial shot of Dublin on Google, laid out like an intricate carpet, glowing under the rise of a morning sun, the Liffey sapphire archery, trees and parks peeking out amongst the low buildings, lush and rain fresh, and the stretch of sea alongside past the Poolbeg Towers, with Howth rising sleepily from the bay in the distance. I remember my chest loosening and the rush of relief that swept across my body. I remember thinking that I could fall in love with this city. It looked like somewhere that could be a home. Such a beautiful piece.
Oh, yeah. That does sound like something I would write. No, I do. I actually do remember writing it. Yeah. No, I loved writing it. Like I had this picture.
And it does always feel that you made that decision, because sometimes we make these decisions to change, to leave. Leaving was hard, but there's a real decision that you seem to have made about falling in love with Dublin and opening up to that idea that it could be home. And you've written about that.
I think it's strange because like I went to university in York, which is a place a lot of people fall in love with. And moving to London, I did not have any of those feelings. Actually, I didn't fall in love with London. I moved there because it was a thing to do and all my friends were doing it. But I found it a really tough move. I remember that one of the first weeks I was there, I got really drunk with my friend and was just sobbing, going, it's too big, and I don't like it. It was just the enormity of the city freaked me out. And actually, when I moved back to Dublin, I'm like, oh, thank God. Okay, the scale makes sense here. Like there was something about London, like a city built to make you feel small, that now after leaving the UK, I have such a better understanding of those imperialist architecture and attitudes that I went over my head at the time because, you know, I just moved to the UK and was like, I'm British now because I assimilated. I had a British accent. Moving to Ireland, I finally looked back on that life really objectively and went, oh my God, there's so much I now understand about even my friends' attitudes and things like that. And I felt an immediate sense of belonging here. And it was one of those things where I'm like, part of it was telling myself, you're going to make something of this because, well, the other option is just feeling devastated. But it also worked. Like, it is a good city. And I'm certainly not the only one who feels that way. There are so many countless stories of people turning up to Dublin or Ireland and going, well, now I don't want to leave. And it's true. But for me, a lot of it was the city. I love the city. I mean, this is why I can't live in a lot of, like, I can't imagine living in a lot of Indian cities. I love pollution-free places that I can walk on foot, that I can cycle, with parks, and like, I love that there's the mountains and the sea. Like, it was just this little like gem that had all the things that could make me happy. And at least, you know, in terms of the city or geography and living in it, yeah, I found that to be true.
Share with us your piece, You City, Your Boyfriend.
So this is You City, You Boyfriend, that was published in Writing Home, the New Irish Poets by Dalit Press. The first piece I ever got properly published, which was October 2019. One of the best book launches ever in Poetry Ireland. So yeah, I'll read that out now. Seated awkwardly on a wooden box, from the last of my cigarettes, my fifth in 2 hours. He talks and talks and talks, and my replies are only punctuation for his next sentence. Across from a grey slab tower, the city smirks, raises an eyebrow as if to say, you know I'm so much better than him. And you're right, because when we converse through the choke of soft air, we exhale each other in whispers on a walk home where a smile has broken my face and the realization that, yes, you are better than him. You are better than all of them because you push up through my thin soles, and I feel every pebble when I'm treading across your tar-bump skin, and I feel embedded in you. You city, you boyfriend, you dusty hug, and when I tell you that you're beautiful, you blush across the canal, even though you already know that grey glamour suits you, we don't need to be told. I wear you like an arm across my shoulder, and when the wind pushes my hair back, I don't need an errant hand across a cafe table to push it aside. Like me, you play your cards close to your chest, but when we mourn, we crack with rain that pummels onto the pavements and across a million cheap umbrellas. So take me in and make me yours, because I've already let the pollen in my pores anoint me to an orchestra of rustling leaves and seagull song, and one day I will take thee to be my lawful wedded home, and I shall wear a dress of summer fog and a ring of past lives, and you will smile and shrug. And in your humid indifference, I will vow to love you anyway, because I'm a hopeless romantic, and you're a city that keeps its own name.
Hey!
Hey! I love reading that one out. It's so much fun to read out.
What's really charming about this relationship with Dublin, it's that it's also inspired or prompted you to write and to give words to those feelings, because you hadn't, it seemed, when you came to Dublin, thought of yourself as a writer and a poet. And those aspects of yourself become manifest in living here.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, I've written poetry my whole life, like just the way one does. It just lives on your computer and that's it. But when my first experiences were milk and cookies or book launches, and, you know, writing for Le Cool meant that I got free tickets to the Dubliners, the Corn Exchange Dubliners, and like all this theatre, and like attending the Fringe as soon as I moved here in it was September. Like, it was a lot. It was a lot of creativity, and it all came from these small communities, because, you know, the arts community here is just small. It is. And I think there was just so much happening, and there was so much space for things as relaxed as milk and cookies to just amazing award-winning theatre. And I don't know what exactly sparked it off, but it certainly did. But it was later on, I suppose, like going to more book launches, poetry events, and hearing more from other writers is when I started writing a bit differently. Like writing for performing is so different. I was writing like little poems, but something like You City, You Boyfriend was very much written to read aloud. Like I have a few pieces like that where they're made for reading aloud, and now I've gone to many workshops and poetry training things, and done a lot of work in terms of writing and editing, and now I'm looking into writing these shorter poems that encapsulate huge feelings in small spaces. But it is all sparked off by the people, by the artists that exist in Dublin, which is why it's scary that they're all moving out of Dublin, because no one can afford to be here, because they're the ones that give Dublin life and make it worth living in. It's a worry that everything's closing up, and all these amazing art spaces that were the reason I felt right and at home and sparked when I moved here with just one friend.
Like Jigsaw has just gone.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Jigsaw's just closed down, and it's just, it's really sad to see that, because that is why Dublin's great. Without it, I mean, yes, the nature is wonderful, but the buzz of the creative community in Dublin is what gives it life.
I mean, these tensions in the city are very real, particularly in housing and in planning, and how the city is, this may be a servant, a tenant to the big global conglomerates, our tech giants who also dominate, including, you came and you stayed with your friend who worked in Google. I mean, such a huge player now within the city. There's that constant tension in the city between, I suppose, people and the market that are vying for who owns the city.
Yeah, and I live in Dublin 8, so we have the Player Wells situation coming up where it's like, what was it, 15 stories of co-living spaces, and it's like, that's just a student dorm, right? It's an overpriced student dorm. The whole point of growing up is that you get your own space and privacy in life, and it's sad and it's embarrassing that it's allowed to happen, and it helps no one, but people want to make money off of it. Like, why? What are these things going to give to the city when everything good is being leached out of it at such a terrifying pace? Like, of course, we're all resilient, which, like, creative people are resilient. They will find ways to keep injecting life back into it. But if it's such a struggle all the time, people will rightly lose their patience and go take their wonderful skills and creativity elsewhere.
As you say, so many artists around us in the last year, particularly in the pandemic year, have been moving. You very much want to see Dublin remain home.
Yeah, and I lived on the north side for most of the time that I've been here. Like I lived off of Parnell Street for a long time in a very small box of an apartment, very literally just one room. I lived in one room apartments for about 5 of the 6 years that I've lived here. My parents were not happy when they walked into those. They're like, what is this? My bathroom's bigger than this. I'm like, yes, I'm aware. I also pay $1,000 a month to live in this bathroom-sized flat. But because of, like, weirdly enough, lockdown gives and it takes. And from, a chain of coincidences, I ended up in this really nice flat in Dublin 8, paying the exact same amount. And I love Dublin 8.
Brilliant.
Oh, I never want to leave Dublin 8 now. Like, I'm not used to being part of a local community. Maybe in terms of like social life, but like this is a real neighborhood. I used to be in a neighborhood when I lived in America, like in a proper cul-de-sac in Bethesda, and I haven't had that experience ever since I was like 5 of a real neighborhood, and it feels really, really good. It's a real sense of proper belonging, and I really love this area. So now I'm like, I'm not even just stuck in Dublin. Now I'm stuck in Dublin 8. I never want to leave here. This is class. At the same time, when I get my citizenship, I don't know, my brain might go, well, finally you can go wherever you want to, really, at least in the EU. So once I have the choice available to me, I'll see where my head's at. But at the moment, this is pretty great. I'm lucky to have found this path.
And we should talk about your day job, because you're working with Fishamble and you're also involved in their marketing, their engagement around their work, but also I think contributing to part of the action, not just the debate that everyone in Ireland and particularly in the art community is having around diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, so I work for Fishamble New Play Company. I'm their marketing and development manager. So I focus on fundraising and marketing more than anything. And they're a really great company to be part of. I love that the plays that they make are telling the story of Ireland as it happens. And I really love being a part of that. That's kind of what I like about being here and in Dublin. And it's kind of what I even like writing. So I was lucky that the day job really invigorates me creatively. Even if I'm not the one writing the plays or producing them or doing the artistic input, it's amazing to be a part of it and facilitate that. So like a lot of arts organizations, it was about time to really consider how we engage artists from other backgrounds that are underrepresented. So yeah, we had a brilliant workshop with Felicia Lasagna, Fella Speaks, and just, did a call out for people from migrant backgrounds, Black artists of color, any sort of ethnic minority, so including travelers as well, just to apply to see what happens. We got like over 50 people applying. It was a small workshop.
It was a beginning.
The idea is that, right, well, they're certainly here. If there was any assumption that they weren't here, of course, I mean, I knew that was wrong, but it's good to have it on paper that it's very much wrong. And it's great to see like other initiatives, like Smock Alley has a new one as well for Black playwrights. I think it's specifically plays. And again, it's well overdue, my goodness. But I'm glad it's happening now. And the whole point is it's just about giving a platform to the people who were here anyway, already doing work. It's just potentially ignored by mainstream arts organizations, or they didn't feel that they could even approach them. So it's really, the onus is very much on arts organizations to do the work and do the outreach and find where these various artists and creatives are already working, existing, writing, making art, instead of expecting people just turn up on our doorsteps. But yeah, I have the unique position of being an artist of color and I guess being part of these programs. So it's great for me, and also great for me to just see all these cool new people I didn't know about.
I think you have another piece that you were going to share with us today. Have you another piece for us, Chandrika?
Oh, I have a few.
You choose, because in a sense, like the idea would be, share one that you'd like to share with people who you might think are new to your work and haven't heard so much before.
Yeah, I'll do two short ones. Let's see. And because they're both about my mother, so I've started actually performing them almost as a pair because they're both short. I was
What's
always making a joke to my mother.
We're going to hear.
Sorry, my mother is Chandrika Narayanan, and I was making a joke. I'm like, Mom, when I write poems about you, they get published, and one of them almost won a prize. So I'm just going to keep writing about you, and my career will be fine. So yeah, here are two poems inspired by her. The first one is called Ararat. My mother is a Bible. She inks her sadness into uniform lines that I reach for in the comfort of darkness to trace fingers along familiar choices. My mother is a prayer. She becomes the psalms I chew over dinner, the repetition in my fury, the snarl in my hair. My mother is risen. She holds aloft a tumor the size of a cathedral in gold mosaic, radiation like sunshine warm with blood. My mother is a prophecy. She screams across the desert, her tongue a testament as she teeters above the memory of a deluge. And then this one is called Stargazing with My Mother, which I wrote on the day of the SpaceX launch last year, when we were... I'm going to stop moving that so it doesn't hear it. This one's called Stargazing with My Mother, which I wrote on the day of the SpaceX launch last year. We've seen stars fall before, she says over the phone, as we peer out over rooftops from different sides of Europe, looking for a blip or a spark against the blue. Try not to mistake a rocket for a star. You need binoculars, she says, and I remember how she demonstrated before handing me a pair as the Hale-Bopp comet blazed across a New Delhi sky. Look, over there, she exclaimed one time. pointing to a needle streak of white as we stood outside a Swiss hotel, not caring what people would think of two Indian women gazing upwards into the night.
Beautiful. It's gorgeous. I mean, what a lovely gift to give to her. Being able to hand it to somebody in their life is such a lovely thing to be able to do.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
And so, yeah, I was kind of thinking about that in that sense of being the outsider who's been here for almost the 10 years, and definitely that sense of the transition, that the early years were tough and that you have found your tribe now, but in Ireland. But what would you think if you were reporting back in that diplomat report where they have to tell the absolute truth, warts and all, the best thing and the worst thing of Ireland, and I guess being here?
I suppose the best thing for me have been the creative community of Ireland. I do feel that being part of the Irish writing community, of Irish cabaret community, and these different groups, they're what create that feeling of home and belonging more than anything else, I feel. The worst part of Ireland, I mean, it has a long way to go in terms of representing the people who literally already live and work here. And it's great that it's happening now, but the more that attention is being brought to the inequality, the more backlash there is from people who are scared of things changing, not realizing that nothing's really changing in a way that affects them. But there is this rising alt-right, fueled by misinformation and, tapping into their fears and insecurities that make an enemy out of queer people and trans people and migrants and people of color. And it's very, very, very disheartening to see that those flames being fanned here. And I'm not sure if they're going to be doused. And that really is scary and it really hurts, because that's one of the things I loved about moving here from the UK. The UK had such blatant institutional racism that I felt really unwelcome all the time. Like every newspaper headline had anti-immigration articles. So it was just shouting at me, you don't belong, no matter what you do. When I moved here, I didn't feel that way at all. So it's really scary and really disheartening to see that sentiment rise up, even if it's in the minority. It's a loud minority, and Facebook is making it more easy for people who wouldn't normally be radicalized to be radicalized. So I suppose that it's amazing to see equality happening, and especially through creative communities, but it's scary to see that equality being threatened by everyday people.
Do you feel that yourself on a personal basis in the city? Do you feel that? Do you feel sometimes that the city is not the most welcome or safest place?
I mean, for me personally, it's been mostly men making me feel unsafe in the way that literally every woman's made to feel unsafe walking down literally any street ever. Like being catcalled walking at night just in my neighbourhood, especially after the murder in London. It just scared us all so much into going, oh no, you're not paranoid. It might actually happen. So for me, the safety issue is being a woman on the streets of a city. In terms of like anything else, to be honest, I don't have much of a personal experience. I've had a few racist experiences, but they weren't horrific. But it's more that, I have eyes. I can see it happen to lots of people around me. The fact that Felicia Olasanya got a death threat just from being on TV, from, Hazel Chu's, all the comments under every single tweet she does. It's not like just because people haven't been directly racist to me doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I can see it. Anyone with eyes can see it. It affects literally everyone, knowing that you're part of a society that might be becoming more intolerant. It makes me paranoid when I might not need to be,
I mean, because so much of it in that sense, even what you're saying, like with Hazel Chu and with Feli Speaks, so much of it has been manifest through social media and often anonymous accounts, and the whole debate about the toxicity of the public space in digital media. And that,
like when Fishamble, like when we put up our post asking for attendees for our workshop, like the wording I chose for that was specifically so that people, like the people it was targeted at, would go, oh, that's for me. So I was trying to actually make it really blatant, really clear, so that they would go, that's for me. It did not occur to me at all that the people that it didn't include would suddenly go up in arms. But that was like hundreds and hundreds of racist replies underneath that. So, and a lot of them, I could see like what they were trying to say. It came from a space of fear and insecurity of like,
of loss. Some people feeling that something will be lost because somebody else gains something. Yeah,
which is, it's really sad. But also the thing is that I know a lot of people whose parents have been radicalized, particularly my American friends. Their parents were nice people, and now they have a very cruel outlook on the world. And it's really upsetting for my friends to have to deal with their own parents who they love, who suddenly are extremists just because of Facebook. It's really scary. So yeah, it's a mix of everything, and everyone's disenfranchisement comes from different places. And in the end, it's a long time coming from systematic inequality that uses the other as a scapegoat, that is encouraged by different governments, that is encouraged by the media. So it's been building an awful long time. It's not like it's come from nowhere. It's just that the platforms are now there to let it, burn with a lot more oxygen.
To close on a happier note,
on a positive note,
close on a more artistic note would be to talk about what you're working on now and for 2021. What's your projects outside of Fishamble, but with your own work?
Yeah. Again, like everything I've done has actually really happened in 1 year. I just decided in 2020 I'm going to use all my holidays to work. I put 1 day a week to doing actual writing work, like editing, submitting, applying to things, actually doing the work. And the results were like pretty instant. And that's how I got published in a variety of different things, all because I actually sat down to do the work. And I burnt out 11 times. I counted my breakdowns. I'm in a sort of fuzzy 11.75 at the moment. It's just kind of like endless. Like it didn't stop. It's just gotten boring level of burnout. So it was really interesting. And the things that I was asked to do, because a lot of them were like, I got to be an editor for Trumpet, which is an amazing experience to find these brilliant voices that I wanted to showcase to Ireland. And I got to do
tell people a little bit about Trumpet.
Yeah, so Trumpet is Poetry Ireland's literary pamphlet. It's, a little one, 36 pages, and I decided that I was going to pack as much amazing people from different backgrounds and their different stories into it. And I wanted it to not be, I suppose, typically literary. So I had articles by Evgeny Shtorn about activism. I had articles from 5 poets about parenthood, because I really want to talk about that, and queer parenthood mixed into it, traveller parenthood mixed into it. I wanted to talk about migrant lives, but, analysing books that talk about home. Yeah, so I was trying to do a lot with 36 pages. I had comics in it. It was a gorgeous project. And now, I'm doing panels. I'm really excited to be running panels and moderating now. So basically all the things that writers do except writing is what I'm doing at the moment. But in literally the last few weeks, I've started writing again. So also, I was on a panel for Kirch Festival, and even chatting to other writers sparked a few things in my head. Like Mark Ward asked, what residency, if you'd ever want one, would you do? And I just went, NASA. Because I actually have always loved arts and science. I did my MA dissertation on the Festival of Curiosity and arts and science organizations working together. I wanted to work at the Wellcome collection for years. So I suddenly was like, I really want to engage with science at some point. I would love to do a scientific residency like the ones I used to write about. Because at the moment I'm writing about space an awful lot. I guess just because while we're trapped in our little homes, people are escaping
looking
the
to
Earth's
the stars,
atmosphere.
as your
and
poem
it just
goes.
blew my mind. So I've been thinking about, maybe challenging myself to write things about different disciplines. And I just suddenly went, oh my God, I don't have to look inwards that much. I don't have to sit here and wallow in my trauma memories. I can actually write about
Look out
music.
and look up.
And I was like, and I was almost like, I want to write a poem about how my mum was a fan of the Beatles. So there've been artistic experiences recently that come from other people's art and stories that have, I think, sparked me into shaking off the, here's what you should do, here's how you should write, here's when you should write, until to just write about whatever. And that's good art. And I think that was just been really freeing recently, of going, just write whatever you want. It can be about like pop music, it can be about a cat outside your window, just write it. And I think that's gotten me actually writing poetry again.
Brilliant.
I think I was taking myself too seriously career-wise and going, you need to edit all your poems. Everyone's asking about this collection that you definitely haven't gotten ready. And I think I just needed to talk to other creative people. And that's what's been really sad, is the lack of
engagement,
chatting
in this period,
to your community, the lack of catharsis that comes with watching loads of theatre and live art, the lack of bouncing creativity off of other creativity. And I think that has really dampened a lot of our creative spirits over the year. And at least now that it's literary festival season, I feel like I'm getting a bit more to work with. But yeah, a year without catharsis really screws you up.
Yeah, if you think about it. Except probably a lot of the catharsis has been happening in our own homes and lives.
Which is nowhere near as satisfying as an amazing play. The lighting design's terrible in everyone's homes. It's not the same.
Chandrika, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you, and I can't wait to see what you write and what you do next. Thanks for joining us on The Family of Things.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been really fun to chat.